it's one of those things, one of those moments in Second World War film and combat footage that just is seared into the mind. It's so powerful. We see Karl Kellner here rolling off the tank with the stump of his left leg still smoking from being taken off by this tank round. Hi guys, I'm Dan Hill, a professional historian specialising in 20th century military history. Today we're going to delve into the archives and investigate raw, unedited combat footage from the US Army's assault on the city of Cologne in the closing stages of World War II. So let's get straight into it. So this is a famous March 1945 film. Ordinarily we would just react directly to this, but I have to admit I do know a little bit about this because I've actually covered this in a YouTube video here on Battle Guide before, and this shows the advance on Cologne in 1945. So American troops of the 3rd Armoured Division, Task Force X, which is a mixture of infantry and armour, pushing into the heart of Germany's 3rd largest city, expecting a really tough fight. And what we're looking at here is troops kind of in the outer suburbs to the west of the city, pushing towards the River Rhine, with the ultimate objective being to cross the Rhine, capture the major bridge over it, and then push on into the heart of Germany. Lots of armour involved here, part of Task Force X under Colonel Leander Doan. They're going to be driving right for the heart of the city, aiming for the famous twin spires of Cologne Cathedral. And this is a classic shot kind of showing those advanced routes. Of course, civilian population, there are still some in the city, but the city itself has been gutted by years of aerial bombardment by this point, as we'll see as we get through this video. It's just been absolutely shattered. What looks like an American Hellcat there, tank destroyer. And a kind of mixture of armour actually used in the advance here. So by this stage of the war, we get the older style Shermans. I'll just pause there for a second. We get the older style Shermans, which are the Sherman's original Shermans, 75mm dual purpose gun arm. They've got kind of that bulbous top to them. And then you get the more newer style, or the more modern style, such as this one here. We're looking, in fact, the tank in the foreground and the tank in the rear at least are Sherman 76s. Have a slightly flatter turret. They're also upgunned, 76mm guns, substantially more powerful than the earlier 75, and they're really the mainstay of the American 3rd Armored Division by this point. An effective tank. That being said, we wouldn't fancy your chances against some of the heavier German tanks, things like Tigers or even the later marks of Panther. But the Americans, as we'll see as we get through this video, do have an ace up their sleeves in terms of the quality of tank they're going to bring into the fight. This is a great shot. Just going to pause on that for a second as well. I love stuff like this because you can tell, one, what's going on generally. Secondly, you can also tell there's been a bit of conversation between the cameraman, in this case a man by the name of Leon Rosenman, who's going to be involved in filming lots of scenes here in Cologne, and also this presumably a mortarman. It looks like he's got a 60mm mortar round tucked inside his combat jacket here, and presumably he's part of a mortar crew. But also deliberate hand placement there. Obviously he's had a chat with Rosenman and they've made some light-hearted remark, which is you see by the grin on his face as he looks down the street. But we are seeing also as well legitimate action footage with Sherman 76 advancing on screen here. Classic GI with cigar and BAR there. The close cooperation between tanks and infantry here is absolutely crucial. Tanks using close range, heavy support, knocking out machine gun positions and so forth. At the same time as the infantry, particularly protecting the flanks of tanks advancing on streets. Armour in streets was a nightmare really in the closing stages of the war, made largely so due to the German Panzerfaust, handheld, portable, disposable, one-shot anti-tank weapon which could easily knock out a Sherman in a single go. So troops like, just pause here for a second, troops like this Thompson armed GI who's on top of the tank be offer very close range support. They'd make sure that the tank's not getting targeted in the same way that the tanks would also support infantry as they advanced forwards. It's really block by block, quite methodical advancing at this point. So again, Sherman 76 with towing cable there advancing on screen. and making their way in towards Cologne centre with infantry. Not looking too worried, it's got to be said, at the moment. So presumably not quite at the very tip of the spear here, although we're starting to see troops looking a little more wary as they advance forward. So clearly there's fire in the area generally. The GI possibly posing for the camera here with his Garand. Doesn't look like he particularly fires it there. This is a great shot though, and this actually gives a good idea of the main objective here. So we can see the famous Cologne Cathedral in the background. Amazingly, this survives the bombardment, which effectively destroys the entire city of Cologne. But this is the objective of effectively 3 different attacks. So one northwards hook, one southwards hook, and then one drive straight up the centre into the heart of Cologne, all designed to converge on the big plaza at the foot of the cathedral. We're actually standing, we know from historical records, that Rosenmann is going straight up the middle with the advance, which is in 2 halves. We have a right-hand road and a left-hand road, both running parallel directly to the city, and Rosenmann is in the right hand of those 2 roads. So this is really what we're looking at right here. German female civilian. Wow, that's really powerful. Just going to go back and look at that again for a second. That's really quite shocking stuff. So you can see this lady here, already put up with 5 years of heavy war. She's clearly got something of a panic, probably terrified, and certainly there's been plenty of trauma in this city up until now. And if we just look at this for a second, clearly you can tell from a bit of camera shake here, but you can also tell from her reaction, probably one of the tanks nearby has fired its main round, and you can see the effect that it has on a lady, very likely scarred by aerial bombardment. It's a classic kind of photographer shot. Rosenmann here has either chucked this photograph down and asked a tank crew to drive over it, or maybe they've done it and he's caught it as a glimpse in a kind of good moment of what we will refer to as B-roll footage there. GI with 30 caliber rounds, and this is an interesting shot as well. Let's just pause on that for a second. Quite a fascinating thing to look at, actually, just picking out little bits of uniform. I always find that really interesting. So if you look at this guy here, one feature worth pointing out is the 2 grenades that he's got attached to his kit here. They've got tape on them, so a kind of masking tape or a gaffer tape of some kind, and the idea is that they're going to hold the spoon down on the grenade, the handle that effectively is going to be released when they're thrown. So they do have a safety pin, as we know. The problem that you get, actually, and a good example of this is Major Dick Winters, famous character from Band of Brothers. He would habitually tape his grenades, and he used to talk about it, and he'd say, yep, always tape my grenades, because you don't know if you're going through trying to work your way through a hedge or get through a particularly confined space. The last thing you want to do is get your safety pin hooked onto a twig or a tree branch or anything like that and get it pulled out. So what these guys will do is they'll tape the spoon down as an extra safety device. In fact, Winters himself, in the famous Crossroads episode where he talks about effectively ambushing a German unit, he throws a grenade, and his grenade goes down into where he knows that a German sentry is, but he forgets to take the tape off. So he realizes that grenade is not going to go bang no matter what. Takes the pin out, doesn't take the tape off, throws the grenade in something of a panic, and he actually goes round, jumps over a dike, and then shoots a German sentry who's cowering, still waiting for the explosion. Of course, Winters realizes it's not going to go bang. But, these kind of little safety things, this shows as well that this guy's probably a veteran. He's been there. He knows that these kind of little tricks that are picked up by troops that have been in the line for some time. Interesting. Again, deliberately placed shot here by Rosenmann, who's got a GI with looks like a BAR next to a sign, mit dem Führer zum Sieg, with the Führer to victory. So clearly a bit of irony in that one. Officers studying the advance route into Cologne. Huge amount of rubble around the streets. Has been cleared somewhat, and cleared very likely by the German population over months and even years. of fighting, although some areas still deliberately remain rubble. And when the Americans advance, they're going to run into a couple of these things that have been left to canalize armor so effectively it can be targeted. And we're going to see that in just a moment. 30 caliber gunner here with a wearing his 30 cal with a chest strap. You can tell there's something different about this style of footage here from what we saw earlier in this reel, and that clearly they're much closer to action now. Rosenman, the photographer, is not out in the middle of the street. He's kind of in cover himself, and you see the guys in and around here are clearly much more aware that there's fighting going on nearby. They're not acting up for the camera. This is clearly something that they're concerned about, and so we do see in a number of instances, you know, people really making sure that they're staying out of harm's way as much as possible, particularly late in the war. Bear in mind, this is, you know, spring 1945. The war's not very long before it's going to be over. Nobody wants to get killed in the closing weeks. This is a great shot as well, and ordinarily I wouldn't dwell on this one, but actually I've been to this spot before, and it's absolutely identifiable. This building that we see on the right hand side here, this tower, this is Roman. Cologne's a Roman city, and this is still there to this day. So you can go and stand, I have done it, you can go and stand on this exact spot. You see the cathedral in the background, so we know exactly where these tanks are advancing down a road called Straße, directly towards the heart of the city. And you can see armor that's going to basically pass in front of us. This same spot you can stand on to the inch, and you can absolutely identify where this Sherman is advancing. Probably only about 400 yards from the cathedral at this point, so really getting close to where, they don't know it, but where a Panther tank is located. And this is in fact the scene that we're looking at right here. There's a Sherman 76 on the left hand side of the road, and the photographer here, the cameraman, Leon Rosenman, is standing behind a Sherman 75 on the right side of the road. He's watching as rounds are being fired up the street here. There's actually a rubble pile directly ahead of them that's going to be stopping them in just a second, and we'll have a quick look at this. Couple of officers discussing the best way forwards, knowing that there's armor up ahead, but not knowing how much or exactly where it's located. You know, so it's a difficult time to figure out where best to make that advance. And let's just have a quick look here. So we've got a Sherman 75 here. So if you like, the D-Day vintage of Sherman. It's got that rounder, slightly higher silhouette, slightly undergunned. These are pretty rare actually by this stage of the war. They're not used as much. The 76 has really taken over as the mainstay of the fight. And what we have, let's just pause that right here. Of course, the photographer doesn't know it at the time, and the crew sadly don't know it. We do, only by records and research, that in this area right here, so this little black dot, what we're actually looking at here is Cologne's Hauptbahnhof, its main train station directly ahead of us, and below that is a railway tunnel. So there's a road. We're actually looking down the road right now. All this rubble is basically covering a road, and in this railway tunnel, about 350 meters away, looking directly at the camera right now, just slightly out of view, can't identify it, is a Panther A, so an early variant of the German Panther tank, and it's pointing directly at this 75mm armed Sherman, which is commanded by a man by the name of Karl Kellner from Wisconsin. We're going to see what comes next is utterly tragic. So Rosenman to the rear left of the tank, and the next shot we've got, let's pause on this straight away. So this is the same tank. Rosenman was just a moment ago standing here in this approximate area, and we could see from the wooden beams on the left-hand side of the tank here. He's now crossed the street, and he's moved back to his left-hand side slightly. He's got a photographer next to him, a British guy by the name of Clarence Garrell, and the two are looking up at the lead Sherman at the very moment that it's hit by a Panther's 75mm tank round. And what comes next is utterly horrific. flames pouring out of the tank. This is Karl Kellner leaving the tank right here, clearly badly wounded. You can see his left leg has been severed as the tank round has hammered straight through it. Just going to pause on this. I don't want to dwell on this for kind of morbid reasons, other than it's an extremely powerful piece of footage. It's one of those things, one of those moments in Second World War film and combat footage that just is seared into the mind. It's so powerful. We see Karl Kellner here rolling off the tank with the stump of his left leg still smoking from being taken off by this tank round. Obviously this smoke pouring out of the tank as well. 3 of the crew inside have been killed, and actually we can't quite see it, but just disappearing out the right hand side is Corporal John Gianluca, who's the tank's gunner, who's also survived this. He comes out the other side of the tank whilst Kellner drops down onto the ground. The very next scene actually cuts from a bit further away, and we see here, this is Kellner's tank on the right hand side. We also see the 76 Sherman that's been advancing alongside it. This too has been hit. This has been hit in the tracks and knocked out. The crew have abandoned this, and Kellner has dropped down to the right hand side here. Tragically, he only lives a couple of minutes, and he's going to lose his life just a couple of minutes later at the back of that tank. So a really tragic moment in many ways. It's an example of very late in the war, tank crew advancing, and it's gone from a fairly sedate, almost tranquil advance into a big major German city to all of a sudden that being turned on its head, with 2 Sherman tanks being knocked out by an unseen Panther tank some 350 yards away. We see infantry now moving up to provide cover. It's probably not clear at this point exactly what has caused that, what has caused the knocking out of those tanks. Certainly, the Panther itself wasn't in view. And what we can see here is a couple of minutes later, as that particular rubble pile, which actually blocked the advance of the 2 Shermans, has been cleared, probably by a bulldozer-bladed Sherman, so Sherman with a dozer on the front, which has cleared a route through and it allows the advance to continue, but it's going to be very slow. In fact, that Panther is going to be taken out by a Pershing tank, a brand new Pershing, which is going to knock it out from the flank, just 100 yards away off to the left of where we're looking right now, in the minutes to come, and it allows the advance to continue. The devastation they've got to advance through is horrific. Well, there we go. A fascinating look at real 1945 combat footage, which I hope you found interesting. If you like deep dives like this, then why not check out our dedicated podcast, World War II, Both Sides of the Wire, where each week our hosts, Professor Matthias Strone and Jesse Alexander, explore different aspects of the Second World War from both the Allied and Axis perspectives. That's all this time. We'll see you again soon.